This quiet rancher hadn't spoken to a woman in 18 years. Then she knocked. The axe handle had a crack in it I'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. That's what I was thinking about when the knock came. Standing in the barn doorway at dusk, the split wood stacked against the south wall, the light going orange across the yard, and I was thinking, tomorrow I'll get to that axe handle. Not because I needed to. Because there are things a man keeps meaning to do that he just never does, and the list gets comfortable in a certain way. The knock came from the front of the house. I didn't move for a moment. I hadn't had a visitor, not one, not counting Dobbs from the feed store who left sacks at the gate and didn't come up the drive, in maybe 3 years. Before that it was the county tax man, and I paid him fast and closed the door. I'm not saying I was afraid of people. I'm saying I'd stopped being part of them, the way a log stops being part of a tree. It happened so slow I didn't even mark when it ended. I set the maul against the wall and walked around the side of the house. She was standing on my porch, tallish woman, dark coat, a traveling bag on the boards beside her boot. Horse hitched to my post with one foreleg held off the ground, something wrong with the shoe or the hock, I could tell from 20 feet. She was looking at the door, but she heard me come around and turned. Her face was older than I expected. Not old, maybe 45, 47, but the kind of face that had earned its lines. Dark eyes. She didn't smile the easy smile people use when they're trying to get something from you. She just looked. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "My mare went lame about 2 miles back. Your place was the first light I could see." I looked at the horse, then at her, then back at the horse. "How long has she been favoring it?" "Since the creek crossing. There was a rock I didn't see until she'd already stepped on it." I walked past her and went to the horse. The right foreleg, sure enough. I ran my hand down the cannon bone, felt the heat above the fetlock. Not broken. Bruised, maybe, or a shoe sprung loose and pressing wrong. I lifted the foot and looked. The shoe had twisted, one nail pulling through. It wouldn't get her another 2 miles. "She'll need to stay the night," I said. "I can straighten the shoe in the morning. If you push her on that now, you'll lame her for real." The woman was quiet a moment. "Is there a town nearby?" "Harlan's Creek, 7 miles. She looked at the dark settling on the plains behind her and didn't say anything. "I've got a spare room," I said. "It's not much." That's how she came to be in my house. I don't know exactly how to tell you what that was like, the first hour. I'd gotten used to the sounds of the place, just the sounds of it, wood settling, the horses, wind off the flats, my own boots on the floor. When another person is in a house, the sounds change. The air changes. She was in the kitchen and I could hear her, not doing anything dramatic, just her coat on the hook, the bag set down, her moving to the window to look out. Small sounds. I stood in the hallway and couldn't figure out what to do with my hands. I hadn't spoken to a woman, a real conversation with a woman, since my wife Clara died in the winter of 1869. 18 years. I know people think that can't be, but it can be, especially if you're the kind of man I am, and especially if you arrange your life the way I arranged mine. Out here you can go months without needing to say more than a few words to anybody, and if you're careful you can make it longer. I wasn't hiding from anything, you understand. Or maybe I was. I just know that after Clara, I didn't see the sense in opening that door again, and the easiest thing was to keep it shut. I was 51 years old, and I had not spoken to a woman in 18 years, and now one was in my kitchen. I went in. She was looking at the shelf above the stove. Jar of salt, tin of coffee, a photograph I kept there face down, same as I'd kept it for the better part of a decade. She didn't ask about the photograph. "I can make coffee if you like," I said. "I'd be grateful." I got the pot and I got the water, and I did the thing I'd done alone every morning and every evening for years, and it was different with someone watching. Not bad different. Just different, the way a word sounds strange when you say it too many times in a row, and then suddenly sounds normal again. She told me her name was Nora Haynes, widow. She was traveling from Abilene to her sister's place in the Oregon Territory, and she'd been on the road for 11 days alone, which I found extraordinary and said so. You did 11 days on the trail by yourself. Who else would do it? I didn't have an answer for that. I handed her the coffee. What's your name? She said. Holt, I said. Everett Holt. She nodded and looked out the window at the dark. This is good coffee, she said. And that was most of what we said that night. She was up before me. I don't know when I'd last had to say that about anyone. I came out at first light and she was at the kitchen table with her hands around a cup of the coffee she'd made herself, and she had a map spread open on the table, old and refolded so many times the creases had gone soft. She was tracing a route with one finger. I watched her a moment from the hallway. She had dark hair shot through with gray, and she wore it pulled back, but some had come loose in the night and she hadn't pinned it yet. There was something about her at that table in the early light that I'm not going to dress up. She looked like she belonged there. That was what I thought, standing in my hallway in my own house. She looked like she fit. I went in and got the coffee and didn't say that. You sleep all right? I asked. Better than I have in a week. She looked up. Thank you for the room. It was empty. She folded the map. How long have you been out here alone? People don't ask me things like that. Nobody asks. Long time, I said. By choice. I looked at her. She wasn't being rude. She had steady eyes, the kind that ask because they want to know, not because they want something from the answer. After a while, I said, at first it wasn't. She nodded and let it sit there. We ate. I'd had eggs and I made them plain, the way I always did, and she ate them without complaint, and I found myself wishing I'd made something better. I didn't know where that came from. I hadn't thought about whether my food was good in years. After I went to the forge. The shoe took about an hour. I had to pull it clean and reset it, and the nail holes had worn out, so I moved it forward and started fresh. The mare was good, patient, let me work. A good horse tells you something about the person who owns it. The horse was calm and quiet and not skittish, which meant whoever had her had taken the time. Nora stood outside the stall and watched me work. I'd worked my whole life with people watching, and it never meant anything. Right then it meant something. I don't know how else to say it. I was aware of her eyes on my hands, on what I was doing, and I was careful, not performing, just careful. The way you are when something matters and you want to do it right. You're good at that, she said. I've done it enough. There's a difference between practice and being good at something. You're good at it. I set the finished hoof down and looked at her over the mare's back. She was leaning on the stall door with her arms folded, and she was serious, not flattering me, saying a thing she meant. I didn't know what to do with it. I put the nailing hammer down and started straightening my tools. She'll hold, I said. You can ride when you're ready. Nora was quiet. Then, Mr. Holt, can I ask you something? Holt is fine. Holt, why do you stay out here? It's my land. Lots of men have land and still go into town, still see people. I picked up the rasp and set it on the shelf with the others. I've got what I need here. Do you? It wasn't a question exactly. I turned and looked at her. What is it you want me to say? I asked. Not hard, just honest. I don't want you to say anything, she said. I'm just asking. You're not a hard man. I can see that much. Hard men don't make good coffee and check a horse's leg before they do anything else. I didn't answer. I buried my husband 4 years ago, she said. I understand the instinct to get small, to make your life small enough that nothing else can get at it. I understand it. She looked at me. I just don't think it's the same as living. I stood there with the sound of the horse shifting weight behind me. You don't know me, I said. No, I don't. She pushed off the stall door and walked back toward the house. I stood there looking at the tools on the shelf for a while. The thing about that is, she wasn't wrong. That's the part I turned over all morning while she packed her things and I saw to the other horses and found reasons to stay near the barn. She wasn't wrong. I'd built something out here that was solid and quiet and mine, and I'd called it enough, and some days it was. Some days I'd sit on the porch in the evening and the sky would go every color there is and I'd feel something close to peace. But peace and enough aren't the same thing, and somewhere around the 15th year, I'd stopped being able to tell which one I was feeling. I'd started talking to the horses. Not just the usual murmur you give a horse while you're working them. Full conversations. I'd stand in the stall and just talk about the fence line, about the weather coming in, about a thing I'd read. I'm not embarrassed to say it because I think a lot of men out here have done the same and just won't admit it. What I am saying is, a man who talks to horses for company knows something is missing, even if he stopped expecting it to come back. I came in at noon to wash my hands. She was still there. Her bag was packed and sitting by the door, but she hadn't gone. She was standing at the kitchen window looking out at the north pasture. "Thought you'd be gone," I said. "I thought so too." She didn't turn. "It's going to storm, I can feel it." I looked at the sky through the window. She was right. The light had gone that particular flat yellow that meant weather, and to the northwest there was a bruise on the horizon I didn't like. Late summer storms out here could come up in an hour and be ugly. "You'll want to stay," I said. "I don't want to be in your way." "You're not in my way." That came out easier than I meant it to. She turned from the window and looked at me, and I held her gaze. "All right," she said. The storm hit at 3 in the afternoon. Not gradual, a wall of it whined first, then the rain so hard it went sideways. I spent 40 minutes getting the horses settled and battening the barn, and when I came inside I was soaked through and my hands were cold. She had the stove going, had found the lamp oil and lit the lamps, had put water on. She handed me a dry cloth when I came through the door. I stood there dripping on the floor and looked at her and looked at the lit kitchen, and I didn't say anything for a moment. "Sit down," she said. "You're going to get cold standing there." I sat. She put a cup of hot water in front of me, not coffee, just water, hot, and went back to what she was doing at the stove. I sat and warmed my hands on the cup and watched the rain hit the window in sheets. "Clara," I said. She turned. "My wife, that's who the photograph is." She didn't say anything. She died in February of '69, fever, 3 days from the first sign to the end. I kept my eyes on the window. After that I just stopped. I didn't mean to for as long as it went. It was supposed to be a season, maybe 2, and then it was 5 years, and then it was 10. And by then I'd gotten so accustomed to the quiet that the idea of anything else was, I don't know, hard to picture. The rain went on. She'd come to stand near the table, not close, just near. "How long?" she asked. 18 years. She was quiet. Then she set her hand down on the table, not on mine, just on the table, a few inches away. "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it the way people mean it when they've been through their own version of the same thing. Not pity, recognition. "She would have hated that I got like this," I said. "Clara wasn't the type to stop. She had a way of going at things. The ranch, the horses, everything. She'd have thought I was being stubborn and foolish." "Were you?" "Probably. People grieve in the shapes they're made for," she said. "That doesn't mean they have to stay in them." I looked at her. I'd been alone so long I'd genuinely forgotten, what it felt like to have someone in the room who was actually interested in what was happening inside you, not being polite, not making conversation, actually interested, actually there. The lamp on the shelf lit half her face. The storm knocked at the windows. "Nora," I said. "Yes." "Why are you still sitting here talking to me?" She looked at me for a long moment. "Because you're worth talking to," she said. "I knew that from the first 5 minutes. Some people you know." The storm lasted through the night. We talked. I'm not going to make more out of that than it was. We sat at the kitchen table and we talked, the lamp burning down, the rain going on outside, and we talked the way two people talk when they've both been quiet for too long and there's no reason anymore to keep being quiet. She told me about her husband, Frank, who'd had a cattle operation outside Abilene and been a good man and a fair one and died of a broken heart. She believed, after their son went in the spring of '82. Typhoid. The boy was 14. I listened to that. I did not tell her it would be all right. I did not tell her anything. I just listened, which is the only right thing you can do with a grief like that. In return, she let me talk about Clara, which I had not done, not with another person, not out loud in I don't know how long. I'd thought about her, sure. Every day some version of every day. But thought is different from words and words are different from words shared, and something about putting it into sound in that kitchen with that woman across the table listening did something I couldn't have predicted. Loosened something. I talked about how Clara laughed, which was loud and sudden and always surprised me. I talked about the way she used to stand on the second rail of the fence to look at the foals in the spring because she wasn't tall enough to see over it otherwise. I talked about the last morning, which I hadn't told to anyone, and Nora sat still and let me. When I finished, there was just the sound of the rain. She loved you hard, Nora said. Yes. That doesn't go away. No, I looked at the lamp. It doesn't. But it's not supposed to be a wall either. I think the people we loved the most wouldn't want us behind walls. I believe that. I looked at her. You think she'd want this? I think she'd want you to have more than an axe handle you keep meaning to fix. I sat back. I heard you in the barn, she said, a small pull at the corner of her mouth, muttering about it. It's got a crack in it. Hey. I looked at her. You're not like most people. You don't know most people anymore. Fair enough. She was smiling now and it changed her whole face, the tiredness going out of it, and I thought, there it is. That's what she looks like when she isn't carrying it. The storm broke at dawn. I know because I was awake to hear it, the rain thinning, the wind dropping, and then that particular quiet that comes after, the whole world wrung out and clean. I was in my chair by the stove where I'd ended up sometime past midnight, and I came awake slow. She was at the table still, asleep over her folded arms. I looked at her for a long time, just looked. A woman sleeping at my kitchen table, the gray morning coming through the window, the lamp burned out sometime in the night. I got up careful so I didn't wake her and went to the barn. The mare was fine, standing square on all 4 feet, the shoe holding. I gave her grain and stood there with her in the early cold, and I thought about the road Nora had ahead of her, another 2 weeks at least to the Oregon Territory, alone, and then her sister's place, and then what? A life she was still building the shape of. I went back inside. She was awake. She'd fixed her hair and was standing at the window with her coat on. The mare's ready, I said. I know. I looked in on her. She turned. Holt, I want to say something before I go. I stood by the door. Last night, she started, and then she stopped and came at it differently. I've been on this road 11 days and I've talked to a lot of people, in trading posts and camps and so on. I've had a lot of how do you do's and thank you for the waters, and I've slept in a lot of hay. Last night was the first time in a very long time I felt like I was actually talking to someone worth talking to. She looked at me. I just wanted you to know that you're that, worth talking to, worth more than you've let yourself be out here. The room was very quiet. Oregon is a long way, I said. It is. Your mare goes lame again. You'll be in a fix. She looked at me, reading something in that. She could use 2 or 3 days before a long push, I said. That fetlock should rest. Is that so? That's my professional assessment. She was smiling again, that same slow pull at the corner. Are you sure that's all it is? I looked at the window. I looked at my hands. Then I looked at her, straight at her, the way I hadn't looked at anyone in a long time. "No," I said. She came across the kitchen. She stopped when she was close, close enough that I could see she was searching my face for something, not doubt, I think. Something else. Maybe just making sure it was real. She put her hand on my chest, flat against my shirt. Not softly, the way you'd think. It was steady. The way you'd put your hand on a wall to feel if it was solid. And she looked up at me and her eyes were steady too. "Then I'll stay 3 days," she said, "and we'll see." I put my hand over hers. Just that. We stood in the kitchen in the morning quiet, and the light coming in was clean and new after the storm, and outside the horses moved in the pasture. "We'll see. Those 3 days. I'm not going to make them more than they were, but I'm not going to make them less either. We worked. That's mostly what we did. There's a particular rightness in working alongside someone good. The rhythm two people can find when they're both competent and neither one has got anything to prove. She asked me what needed doing and I told her, and she did it right the first time. She had a way of looking at a problem, a stuck gate hinge, the smoke backing up in the stovepipe, where she'd go quiet and just look at it until she understood it, and then she'd do the thing. Watching that was something. I fixed the axe handle. I mentioned this because she noticed. She came by when I was at it, wrapping the split with wet rawhide the way you do, and she stood and watched, and when I was done she said, "There, that was bothering you." And it had been, for 2 years. And the reason I finally did it was standing right there. On the second evening, we sat on the porch. The sun was going down, and the sky was doing what it does out here in the late summer, going colors that have no proper names, orange bleeding into something you can't call anything but that, and then a green along the horizon, and then the dark coming up from the east like a tide. I'd seen that sky 10,000 times. I'd sat on that porch alone and watched it and felt the thing you feel, which is something close to peace, and sometimes it was enough and sometimes it wasn't. Nora was in the other chair, her coffee in her hand, her eyes on the sky. She didn't say anything about how beautiful it was. She just sat with it. That's the thing about a certain kind of person, they don't need to say the thing out loud. They just receive it. After a while she said, "I've been thinking about Oregon. And my sister's there, that was the reason. She wrote and said come, and I packed up and started going." She turned her cup in her hands. "I don't know that I had a reason beyond that. I waited. I don't know what I was going to do when I got there exactly. Help her with the place, I suppose. Be useful. I'm good at being useful." She looked at the last light on the horizon. "But useful somewhere else is still somewhere else." "It is," I said. "You have a good ranch," she said. "You have," she turned and looked at the house, at the barn, at the pasture. "You have something real here. It's been mostly mine for a while." She looked at me. "Does it have to stay that way?" The last of the light went. I thought about the honest answer. I thought about what it would mean. I thought about Clara, the way I always think about Clara, but this time there was no wall in it. This time it was more like permission. Like I could hear her, loud and sudden the way she was, telling me I was being a stubborn fool and what was wrong with me. "No," I said, "it doesn't have to stay that way." Neither of us said anything after that for a while. The stars were coming out. The horses settled in the pasture. Somewhere down in the creek bottom, a nighthawk was calling, that hollow sound it makes in the dark. Her hand came off the arm of the chair and found mine. Just that. My hand is a working hand, rough in the palm and the knuckles, 25 years of fence wire and cold mornings and iron tools in it. Her hand was not soft either. She'd worked the trail for 11 days, and her hands knew work before that. 2 hands on the arm of a porch chair in the dark, under the first real stars of the evening. That was enough, more than enough, it was everything. She didn't go to Oregon. I want to be clear, that was her choice, not something I talked her into. I wouldn't have done that. She wrote her sister a letter, wrote her a real letter, sat at my kitchen table and took 2 hours over it. And the gist of it was that she'd found a reason to stop before she got there, and she hoped her sister would understand. She told me later her sister wrote back and said about time. We were married in November. Reverend Tidwell rode out from Harlan's Creek and stood in my front room and said the words, and the only witnesses were old Dobbs from the feed store and his wife Mabel, who cried, which I hadn't expected, and which Nora said she'd expected completely. That was 8 years ago. I'm 59 now, Nora is 55. We work this ranch together, and it runs better than it ever did when it was just me, which she does not point out directly but which I'm aware of, and which makes me glad instead of sore, which tells you something about how she is. The photograph of Clara, I turned it face up again. It lives on the shelf above the stove. Nora dusted it once, careful, the way you'd handle a thing that belongs to someone. She has her own losses on that shelf in a manner of speaking. We're both people who have carried the dead a long time. That doesn't go away. You just make room. There's a thing I want to say about being a man who'd gone as quiet as I'd gone. People talk about loneliness like it's a feeling, and I suppose it is, but what it becomes after enough time is more like a condition. Like something you've had so long it's part of the structure of you. You don't always feel the loneliness because you've adjusted around it, the way a tree grows around a fence post. You've built up a life that works within it. And the things you've lost, the things that got walled off, you stop expecting them back. And after a while, you stop knowing they're missing. What I mean is, I didn't know how much I'd stopped being able to feel until Nora sat across from me in a storm and looked at me like I was worth looking at. That sounds simple, it isn't. For a man who spent years watching other men be counted for something, the loud ones, the young ones, the ones with money or lineage or easy words, and watching himself go unseen, the moment when a good woman looks at you and says, plainly, you're worth talking to, you're worth more than you've let yourself be, that does something. It does something structural. It doesn't fix everything and it doesn't fix it all at once, but it opens a door. She opened a door in me that I thought was sealed for good. I fix things now. All the things on the list, I fix them. The axe handle was first, and after that the hinge on the south gate, and after that the leak above the kitchen window I'd been living with for 6 years. Nora says it's because I finally have someone watching, but that's not quite it. It's more that I've got a reason for the place to be good. The place was mine before. Now it's ours, and ours means it matters in a different way. This morning she was at the stove and she turned when she heard me come in and she had that look, the one she gets when she sees me come through the door. I can't explain the look except to say it's glad. She's glad when I come in. After 8 years she's still glad. I know men who have had that their whole lives and don't know what they have. I know what I have. I poured coffee and stood behind her and she leaned back against me, just briefly, the way she does, her back against my chest. She was watching the coffee pot and I was looking out the window at the early light on the pasture and the horses moving slow in the cold. Going to freeze tonight, I said. I know it, she said. We stood like that, her back in my chest in the warm kitchen and the cold light outside. The axe handle doesn't have a crack in it anymore. The gate swings right. The kitchen window doesn't leak. I've got a good woman who saw what I was when I'd stopped seeing it myself. After 18 years of quiet, I've got a house with sound in it, her voice in the morning, her boots on the floor, the particular way she laughs when I say something she doesn't expect. I didn't go looking for this. It came to my door in a dark coat with a lame horse, and it stood on my porch, and it was steady in the eyes. I think about that sometimes, how close it came to not happening. A different route, a different ranch with a different light showing in the dark. I'd have gone on. I'd have gotten up the next morning and the morning after that, and I'd have talked to the horses and meant to fix the axe handle, and none of this would have been. I'd have been all right. I'd have had enough. But she's right, what she said that first night. Enough isn't the same as living. Now I know the difference.